and good morning to our listeners from around the world, and welcome to another edition of This Morning with Soulivity, broadcasting live from our studio in Washington, D.C., and on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I am so glad you're here with us. I am joined today by my very special friend and Soulivity host, Teresa Greco. Good morning, Teresa.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Oh, man. Good morning. Listen, we have a very special segment today because we're going to be talking shortly with France 24 Turkey correspondent Shona Bhattacharyya about the disaster that is still going there on the Turkey and Syrian border. But before we begin, I want to remind all of you that, listen, this is an interactive discussion. If you have some questions for any of us, including Shona, please just post them right directly to our chat, and we'll get to them as much as we can. Listen, just to give a little background on what's happening in Turkey and Syria, about 5 days ago, a massive 7.8 magnitude earthquake rocked that region where the number of dead is staggering. And my dear friend Shona, who is from France 24, has been covering the story on site from the border there. And so I just want to welcome her in. Shona, thank you so much for being here on This Morning with Soulivity.
Thank you for having me.
Um, what's the latest that's happening there right now? I mean, we've gotten so many different stories over the last 5 days. You're there on the ground. What can you tell us?
Well, it's actually been a week now. The first
Wow.
earthquake, it's been exactly a week. The first earthquake happened last Monday morning at 4:17 a.m. local time. That, of course, was followed by dozens of aftershocks. And then there was a second earthquake that happened around 1:30 in the afternoon local time in pretty much the same area. And in fact, geologists say that second earthquake, which was like an actual earthquake, it wasn't just a big aftershock. That second earthquake was actually triggered by the first earthquake. So that's something that's extremely rare in seismology, and it just goes to show you like several things. The first thing that it shows is that we are in an earthquake region. Like Turkey alone feels about 10,000 a year. And most of them obviously are not this big, thankfully, but they're basically happening almost all the time. And one of the reasons for that is because it's located like in the middle of three tectonic plates that continuously kind of rub against each other. And in addition to those plates, you also have fault lines that run throughout the region, and that are every few decades or every once in a while throughout history, we have evidence and historical records of massive earthquakes all along the area. Throughout history, going back all the way to Roman times. I mean, as long as we've known, or as long as we have records of history, we have records of earthquakes in this region. So the thing is that in this area, which is really, really big, it's about the size of Austria.
Mm-hmm.
And so this, I'm just talking about the Turkish side for right now. That is, we have damage in about 10 provinces. It's estimated that 14 million people are affected. This in a country of 80 million. So we're really talking about a very large percent of the population. And so you have cities like Antakya, that's also known as Hatay. It used to be called Antiochia back in antiquity. Antakya actually has the church that was built in the rock in the mountain with like tunnels for people to escape the Romans, for the first Christians, and it's in that church that actually visited that people who were followers of Christ decided to call themselves Christians. So
Wow.
anyway, in that city has been destroyed or at least damaged, according to local Turkish media. Up to 70% of that city is destroyed. There's also the city of Kahramanmaraş, which is a bit northeast of the city I was just telling you about, Antakya. That is where the epicenter of that first earthquake that happened at 4:17 in the morning on Monday. That is where the epicenter was, and that also has been destroyed. That city has also been destroyed to about, or damaged at least. The estimates are like 60-70%. So we are basically in what looks like a war zone. It looks like
Wow.
carpet bombing. It looks
Wow.
it's like building after building, street after street, and then sometimes you'll see a building that's still standing, or sometimes you'll see a building that's literally about to keel over, like it's at like, maybe not 45 degrees, but I mean, not very far from that. And you walk under it and you're like, dear God, I hope it doesn't collapse like right now. Because they
Wow.
are still collapsing. I mean, the other day we were in another affected city called Osmaniye. And the thing is that like in these affected cities, like no one is allowed in any building, like any building. And there was a 2-story building, and there was a butcher shop on the ground floor, and the butcher wanted to go check in on his shop because there's been looting, because people are stealing things, and also because he just wanted to see the damage. And when he opened the door, his building was a bit damaged, and when he opened the door, like the building literally came crashing down around him, and he was able to get out safe, but 3 people were walking by right at that moment, and they were caught under the rubble. So this is just like, I'm just explaining right now the physical damage, but it's so much more than that. It's she ran out of the house in her pajamas, and it's cold here. It's really cold. I'm sorry, I'm not good at Fahrenheit, but Celsius, it can go to -0, which is below freezing
Wow. Well, yeah,
at
that's below
night,
freezing. Yeah.
and it's very, very cold at night. And so people are sleeping in their cars at first. Now more and more of them are sleeping in tents that are humanitarian tents. But yeah, so you have people who literally they have nothing. They have lost they have nothing on them, on their person, but they have lost everything, all of their possessions, of everything, their house, everything. I mean, it's really catastrophic, and in the blink of an eye.
Wow. Teresa, did you have a question for Shona?
Yeah, I was wondering what the latest death toll was.
The latest death toll, I believe, is at 29,000. Is it
Wow.
Okay.
31 only in Turkey? Yeah, 31,000. More than 31,000 only in Turkey. And I would just like to make something clear. The death toll, what are we saying? We're talking about the people who have been pulled, the bodies that have been pulled from the rubble.
Wow.
So you got to imagine all of those bodies that are still trapped and that have not been pulled out. Those are not counted in the death toll. And in fact, it's very interesting because we still haven't really seen an official estimate of how many people are missing, being presumably trapped in that rubble. Some people are saying up to 200,000. I hope that's too high. But what I'm saying is that this death toll is going to get really, really high. It's already really, really high, but it's just going to keep climbing.
So rescue efforts are still going on a week later right now.
Yeah, and in fact, you have some miracles. I mean, it's this Monday. So right here, right, it's like 4 p.m. In Turkey, and already at least 6 people have been pulled from the rubble alive. That doesn't mean, unfortunately, that they'll remain. So I mean, obviously, we hope that they'll be okay. But some people are really, 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 cold and hungry and in after the earthquake, and sometimes it's like little babies, sometimes it's old people, like you've got basically men, women, children, old people, like everything, every profile. But the thing is, if I can tell you that there's 6, that means that there's like no one. Do you know what I mean? Like it's so rare that it makes headlines now when people get pulled out. To survive, like the catastrophe itself, at first when it happened, like it was unprecedented, or at least like not it hadn't been something like this bad in almost 100 years, in 85 years here in Turkey. But now now it's exceptional is like surviving that earthquake, or those double earthquakes, really. So so the rescue efforts are ongoing. Some have started to, especially some international rescue teams have started to go home. A few, though, most of them are still on site and still digging, hoping for a miracle, or at least trying to get bodies of loved ones, because you got, people standing around their buildings, or at least the buildings where their loved ones used to live, and being like, no, but she's got to be in today. She's got to be in there. Like my mom, my dad lives here, my brother. And so they're going to wait sometimes for days, and they're still waiting for rescue workers, obviously hoping for a miracle. But even if the miracle doesn't happen, like just to get their body back so that they can bury them, or they can see them one last time. And just be sure, they got to be sure that this person is gone for them. So this is a big tragedy. But apart from the rescue teams, though, there is now like a whole humanitarian disaster, because these people are now homeless in the middle of winter. So they've got to be housed somewhere. They need food, they need water, access to toilets is almost non-existent. You got to think about that too. Showers as well, obviously. So this is a really like all-encompassing disaster.
So, Shauna, really quickly, we were talking offline before you came on about the fact that this happened at night while people were sleeping. Can you kind of set the scene so people understand why this was such a horrific tragedy for people? I mean, this wasn't during the day.
Yeah, so during the day, there's more of a chance that you're not in a building, like you're in the street, or I don't know if you're a farmer, you're in your field, or, you're out. And she was telling me about, and that happened during the day. And she was telling me about a woman who had been caught during the earthquake in a supermarket. And so she was able to basically drink Coke and like survive on Coca-Cola for a week 10 days before they found her. But the thing is that when you're asleep in bed, when you have, because 4 a.m. is, it's late, like honestly, there are very few people that are awake at that time. So what I was saying also when we were off air was, earthquakes, they won't necessarily kill you. If you're in a field and the ground shakes, maybe you'll fall, but this is like you're in your house, and so your house will collapse. Your building, your multi-story residence will collapse on you.
Right.
And so you're going to be hit by falling debris, by walls, by floors, ceilings, whatever, by even your own furniture that's going to be like jostled around. And you're surprised. Most people, because I think that the first earthquake, it was pretty long. It was like 45 seconds. So, and if it was so strong that it woke people up. So you have obviously a good number of people who were able to get out of their house, to run out of their house in their pajamas to get their family, hopefully. But what that means in the middle of the night is that it's just so much harder to anticipate, or even to think clearly. Imagine like how many of us, when we wake up in the morning, we're still a little groggy, we're still trying to get our wits about us, and reaching for your phone. Here, this is like, you got to get out now, because if you don't get out now, you're gonna be dead.
Wow.
And it's really, really intense for these people. They really went through something that is absolutely horrific. It's the stuff of nightmares, really.
Wow. Listen, Shauna, stay right there. We're going to come back with you. I want to know more about, like, how in the heck did you get there? Because you guys live on the other side of Turkey, right? You're in Istanbul. And so I want to hear about, like, when did you get the news of what was going on there, and like your journey there and your reactions to, especially when things first happened. And so listen, everybody, we're going to take a quick pause, and we'll be back with more Soulivity Week. More this morning with Soulivity.
Hey there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoyed the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. I'm joined by my very special friend and co-host, Teresa Greco. And on the line, direct from the Syrian-Turkey border, France 24 Turkey correspondent Shona Bhattacharyya. Shona, again, thanks for being here. I think you're shedding a light on what's happening there that I think people here in the States don't know, or even in Canada, where Teresa, where you are. I mean, Teresa, this is information you didn't know, correct?
No, and it's, on the ground type of information that even, the news maybe doesn't share with us. So this is amazing.
Exactly. So, Sean, you're there in the city. Tell us a little bit about when you found out and your journey there, because again, we were talking offline. That was fascinating. I think people would need to know that as well.
Yeah, well, we obviously were sleeping as well when the earthquake happened. We live in Istanbul. My husband is also a journalist for France 24. We both work. That's how we met, and we've been in Turkey now for 4 years, just over 4 years actually. And actually, I did a report once shortly after coming here on like, is Istanbul ready for an earthquake? And very, selfishly as a journalist, I was like, oh wow, I wonder what would happen. I wonder what that would be like to cover a major earthquake. Well, now I do not wish it on anyone.
Wow.
And especially not in Istanbul, please. Like, just don't have, just not now. Just wait until I leave. Very selfish. But the thing is, so we were sleeping. We got a call from our newsroom in Paris. Obviously, it's a 24-hour newsroom. People are up all the time, and they saw the wire go by, and they called us at like 6:30 our time, so like probably about 2 hours after that first earthquake. And we were sleeping, and yet we kind of woke up and picked up the phone, and they were like, quick, you got to be on air now, like there's been this huge earthquake. And we were like, what are you talking about? We had no idea. We were so out of it, and we literally were like, honestly, we're sleeping, just call us in the morning. And they were like, no, you need to get up
Wow.
now. And actually, since that moment, we've been, that first day, we were still in Istanbul, but we were live with different media, our own media, but also other media, doing live updates on the situation. And then that Monday night, we were able to get a flight out to.
Hang on. She'll be right back, everybody. She's in Turkey, so the connection can be a little iffy. There she is.
But the flight was, because the thing is, even in Istanbul, the weather was horrendous. I mean, it was really windy. There were snowstorms. It was very cold, and so planes were having trouble like taking off, landing, etc. So our flight was delayed 3 hours. We were finally able to get to Adana, and we fortunately found a hotel, because obviously everybody's coming to cover the quake, and so hotels were fewer and far between, like with available rooms. And so we got there, and then starting the next, we got there really late, probably about 2 in the morning, and then 8 the next morning we were off. We were on the road, we were driving, we went to different cities that first day. And then since then, it's been a different city every day, sometimes going back to the same city to see how progress has been made since like the last time we were there, like 2 days ago, because that's the thing, everything goes by so quickly.
Right, right.
And everything, and things change. Like even one time we were in the second day, we were the second day in the city I was telling you about, Antakya, also known as Hatay, and we were there like when the security forces really started coming in, and with like helicopters and bulldozers, and I mean, we with the rescue teams, ambulances, things were really getting so literally like things would change like in a matter of hours.
Wow.
And so since
Wow.
then we've been going from city to city. We've been to most of the places that have been hard hit. There is one place that we were not able to get to, but that place, there's so much snow that we've been told that like if you go there, you need like snow tires to just get to the city. So very few people have even been able to get, as in like reporters and stuff have been even able to get there, because it's so cold and it's so snowy. But yeah, just think about the people that are actually there and that are now living in a destroyed environment. I mean, it's just
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Teresa, you had a question for Shona.
So I was wondering what the displaced people are, how they're dealing with all of it. That I heard that rescue efforts were coming in slowly, and that there was
Yeah.
support towards the government, and that they didn't have any places to stay. You mentioned that there are tents now, but I'm just wondering how that's going, how the people are being supported, how do they seem? Do they seem angry? Do they seem upset? Like what's going on with the
Yeah,
people?
so it's been really, like so that first city I told you, we got there the second day, and there was like almost no rescue efforts when we got there at first. And as I said, like we saw the aid kind of come in progressively, but the
We'll give Shona a second to click back in, guys. She's on live there.
and so people when they were waiting, and because the terrible thing is, you're waiting, you're outside the building, for example, where your mom is trapped, and you hear her voice, you hear her calling, you can
Oh
literally
my goodness.
you can hear her asking for help.
Oh
And
no.
after a few hours or a few days, you don't hear it anymore. The voice disappears, and you're like, oh my God, is she dead? Is she too weak? Like, what's going on? What happened? And you have no way of knowing. So you have people who are completely like, how should I say? They are, it's not even panic. It's like, you go crazy. You go
Yeah.
crazy. You go crazy with grief, with
Yeah.
not knowing, with anger, like, and then you had like the first rescue teams coming. This woman was like, listen, my son lives in London. He had time to come here before the rescuers came here, like all the way from London. How is it possible that like from, different parts of the country, people haven't been able to come here to rescue us yet? Like that just doesn't make sense,
Mhm.
And so like a lot of anger, and she was like, people, some people are livid, other people, people react in different ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes, they get political. Sometimes they're just like crying because everything is just broken down around them and they've lost family members. Sometimes people kind of turn into zombies, because the thing is,
Right.
after a
Mhm.
week,
Mhm.
Right.
like you haven't showered, you're never been warm, you're not eating well, there's no so you're literally in this like state of just surviving, of zombiness, and this is going to leave. So we went to this city called Adiyaman, which is very, very badly hit. We're also rescuers took way too long to get there, and people there were also very, very angry. And there is like a very small contingent, but it does exist, of psychological support, like trauma, psychologists. And we went to their headquarters. A lot of the people that were, licensed to give psychological support had lost people of their own.
Oh
And
my
they were
goodness.
already, more in mourning and traumatized themselves. Some of them were so traumatized that they wouldn't even enter the building of the.
Wow.
So afraid of it happening again, and just getting really angry at the response. There's also another element here that's really important, because there's like the immediate response, but there's also everything that leads up to it. Because as I was saying earlier, you don't die because the ground shakes. You die because your building collapses on you. And when you're in an earthquake prone zone, like for example in California, when you build a house or a multi-story building in California, you have to adhere to strict earthquake norms, so that when there is an earthquake, your house doesn't come crashing down around you, right? So these norms also exist in Turkey. They exist since the last major earthquake, which was in 1999. And that killed upwards of 18,000 people. And that was a really big one too. But after that, the government was like, okay, we need to put norms in place. We need to make sure that the buildings that we build, at least from now on, are safe. And the thing is, a lot of the buildings that collapsed last Monday, they were new. They were built after.
Wow.
And so what that means is that those norms were not adhered to. And how did that happen? Well, because to build an earthquake-proof building is more expensive than building a non-earthquake-proof building, right? And so these are like builders, promoters, developers that are like, listen, because I'm going to pay you a little bribe to like the local, architect, whatever, or the local politicians or whatever. And then there's like this whole thing in Turkey where you have people who build their own houses. Like they'll like see land and they'll be like, oh, I'll just build a house there. I know it sounds completely anarchistic, but it's a thing, and they're called gecekondu, and it's like a real thing in Turkey. And every few years, there's a government amnesty. It's like, okay, I'm going to recognize that you own a house, that you built the house, and that it's yours. And so they do that, and so that way, that house, even though it was built illegally, they'll be like, all right, well, now it's a legal house, right? So it's an amnesty. It's a building amnesty. The last time they did a building amnesty was 4 years ago. It was in 2019. So these are systemic things. It's not just a political thing, as in like which political party. This is a systemic thing. This is like, there are lots of rules in Turkey. There's a lot of rules, but a lot of times you can get around them, and that can be deadly.
Wow. So I'm still on this thought pattern of that there's no real strict codes in a earthquake prone zone. I'm just blown away by that, Shona.
Well, there are. No, but there are.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, but they're just not respected.
Oh, wow, that's even worse.
It's even worse. And that's why people are even more angry, because they're like, I mean, I went to a hospital today. That was built 2 years ago. A hospital built 2 years ago, and it's so damaged. I mean, it's still standing. It's got, it's just got cracks in the wall, plaster falling. I went inside. I mean, it looks like it's a complete, complete mess. But it was built 2 years ago. Like, normally a hospital built 2 years ago should still be standing. It should still be standing. It should be a safe place for people who are already in the hospital, that they're okay, but also that people who need to go to the hospital can go there. And instead, they've had to build a field hospital outside the hospital, because the actual hospital, this new place, is damaged. So that's another source of that anger that we were talking about. And a lot of it, you got to also understand this part of Turkey. I mean, Turkey is not a rich country, period, but this part of Turkey, the southern part, it is, you know, even more poor in some places. And you know, you also have that kind of financial difficulty. If you're going to live in an earthquake proof apartment that was different, in a building that was, you know, expensive to build and all the norms, that apartment is going to be expensive. You know what I mean? Like that condo is going to cost you. And if you don't have the money because you're poor, well, you're not going to live there. And you're going to be able to house yourself in a cheaper, more dangerous building, and you're fine. You're totally fine until that earthquake hits.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Shona, we're gonna stay with you, because I think it's important for people to understand what's happening there. Um, can you tell us some personal stories of your own about your experience there, your experience with the survivors, that really kind of stick out for your heart?
I mean, there's just so many. Literally, like 10 minutes before we started talking, I was invited inside a tent of a family whose apartment building was damaged, and they don't feel safe there anymore. It needs actually to be checked out by experts to make sure that they are allowed to go back in, or if the building has to be destroyed. But so they're complaining. There are tents, like humanitarian tents in the city, but they don't have one. They're not in one.
Mm. We'll give Shauna just a second, everyone, to click back in. She is on site there at the earthquake zone, so internet is a little spotty. Teresa, this is just, I'm glad that we have her and
I
we're
agree.
connecting with her, because again, these are things that I think most people here in North America specifically, here she is.
The thing that's the strongest thing that I saw was a positive thing. It was near, the car was parked near, you know, obviously, you know, broken buildings or whatever, and all of a sudden there was all this movement, and all these rescuers brought out like a little boy. He was probably like 4 to 6 years old, and I saw him come out, and he was unscathed, and or at least he seemed unscathed, and you know, that was just a really beautiful moment. But at the same time, like, I went to this other city 2 days ago, Adiyaman, and that's been really, really badly hit, as I said earlier. And there I smelled rotting corpses for the
Oh,
first time.
wow.
And
Wow.
in case you're wondering what that smells like, it smells like quite pungent BO.
Oh,
And you're like, gosh, you know,
oh,
what was that whiff? And then you figure out, oh my God. And so there's this other thing, which is crazy, that I would never have thought about, is that with these collapsed buildings, like, there's all this rubble and there's all this dust, so
Right.
much dust.
Right.
And
Right.
people are like going through the rubble, and there's so much dust like in the rubble. And when they're going through it, they're making even more dust. And like, you're literally choking, like you can't breathe because there's so much dust around you.
Wow.
And that you're breathing in and stuff. And in fact, in one place, we literally saw water cannons being sprayed on ruins, so that to like kind of bring down that dust. And actually, it did make a really big difference. But I can only imagine that if you're stuck underneath and that you get this water and that it's already really cold, then that's not obviously a good idea either. Other things that really stuck out in my mind, you know, so many people just breaking down in front of you. You know, you ask them what life, what happened, what you know, what they're going through, and they can't even speak. You know, they're just they're big men, you know, families, fathers, you know, everybody just, you know, people sitting around campfires, trying to keep warm, and, you know, sticking close to each other, friends, neighbors, and crying, you know. It's really, yeah, it's really, really heavy. And I'm having trouble right now following like a line of thought, because it's just like a mosaic of images of last night. I dreamt that but I dreamt of people under the rubble. Like, it gets to you. Like, it's the
wow.
hardest thing I've ever seen in my reporting.
Mm-hmm.
And even a friend who has, you know, covered several war zones was telling me yesterday that it's the hardest thing for her as well. It's just she's never had a, you know, she's never been to a place of this just emotional, this charge.
Wow, Shona, let's stay with that. Let's stay with that line, because I think I want to let people into your world, because I think a lot of times journalists they're seen as, oh well, you're just reporting on the news, and all you're supposed to do is just give us the facts and figures, and then you as a journalist aren't seen as also a human being. So let us into that world a little bit.
Well,
And
I
yeah.
became a mother 2 years ago. I have a little girl.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
super
she's so
cute.
cute. Oh my
She's
God.
very cute, but she's she's in Istanbul right now with her nanny. Hopefully we're gonna get to go back to Istanbul tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. I it's been really hard as I don't know. I'm not a super emotional person in general.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
But it's just so human. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
God, this could be me. This could be my family. This could be my friends. This could be my child. You know, what if, you know, you have instances of like a baby coming out alive and like all their whole family dead. And it's like,
Mhm.
what's gonna
Right.
happen to that baby? You
Yes,
know?
yes.
Right. Right.
And like there are family, you know, family here is something that's very, very, very important. So people have family, except if you're Syrian, of course, or like another refugee. That's a
Right.
whole different story.
Right.
Um, and the Syrian issue is just also, I mean, horrific. Like the Turkish government has decided to send the corpses of Syrian refugees that died in the earthquake in Turkey back to Syria. It's like, oh, well, they lived on your soil and they died on your soil, but now that they're dead, you don't want to bury them on your soil, you know?
Wow.
Or like it's just, or like, you know, Turkey's been so overwhelmed by its own problems that it hasn't, you know, really sent any help to Syria. So like Syria's been really, really hurting, especially like after, you know, 12 years of war. But the fact is that as on a human level, you can't help when you have someone in front of you who's literally begging you to help them get their mother out of.
Mm. Mm.
I have never cried during the mission, you know, this much. I mean, this is even like sometimes during a live broadcast, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you just think it, you know, when you describe what you see, and in describing what you see, you can't help but kind of break down, you know. It's just it is really, it's really difficult. And then you're like, what, you know, I mean, it's sympathy, but I haven't lost anyone.
Right.
I haven't lost my house. I'm gonna get to go home and take a bath after this. Like,
Mhm.
this is just it's really insane.
Wow.
I
Let
feel
us
like
know.
I'm repeating my words, but
No, 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 no. You're coming through loud and clear, and I think that people need to understand, especially in these types of disasters, that what you see on your TV or what you listen to on your computer or radio, that those are human beings, those are people.
yeah, and sometimes, you know, you see people mourning, or you see people crying, or you see people like receptioning the body of their loved ones, you know, and you don't want to film, you know, it's your job,
Right,
but
right.
you don't dare, because I mean, this is such a private, oh, such a private moment for them. And sometimes when you do try to film, sometimes people get angry because they're like, this is, what are you using? Are you using my grief? Are you gonna,
Right,
you know, this,
right.
and you get that, of course. I mean, I totally get it, you know. So you try not to make yourself too conspicuous, and with your like, you know, your North Face, you know, warm down jacket, and your like huge boots that are protecting you from the cold and from the snow, and your thermal whatever, like, you
Right.
know. And these people, like, it's just there's
And
like,
they have nothing.
and
They
they have
literally,
nothing, and they're
yeah.
literally in their pajamas, you know. So it obviously there is a little bit of that kind of distance, because just we haven't lived through what they lived through. But it is very very personal, and we try to tell the story as completely as possible, but it's hard. You're right. I mean, there's obviously things that are going to get lost in translation. There's obviously things that are not going to be addressed, and you've got to understand also that like it's been bad now, like really bad for like a year and a half. Okay. And so what that means is like prices here have tripled in the last like year and a half, 2 years, for things like bread, for like rent,
Right.
for like things that are like water. I mean, everything is just, the prices just keep going up and up. So you've already had this like really bad economic crisis where people are already really struggling. And then on top of that, you've got this earthquake that hits. And then of course this happens after COVID. And then there's like a presidential election, a presidential and legislative election that's supposed to take place on May 14th. And yeah, no, it's everything at the same time. Also, this is the 100th year anniversary of the founding of modern Turkey. So you've got like so many different elements coming in and just like converging. And it's just like a situation that's extremely tense. We're not sure if that election, like right now, the election is supposed to go ahead as planned, but like today, literally today, this Monday, the opposition was supposed to announce who their candidate was going to be, and they've postponed the announcement of who that candidate is. And it's like, well, okay, but then when are you going to do it? Because there's supposed to be an election. And now people are like, oh, well, maybe there won't be an election, or there'll be an election later, or we don't know. And especially if you're angry at the government and you want to vote them out, well, you want to do that. You want to have a date where you can be like, I have a date with the poll booth. I want to get this guy out. So it's not sure like which way it's going to go, the election. Before the earthquake, it was pretty sure, I mean, it looked really plausible that the government, President Erdogan, would win another term, even though he's been in power for almost 21 years now.
Right.
But he would win again. But now, it's kind of all up in the air. Everything's up in the air. Nobody knows anything really.
Wow. Teresa, did you have another question?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, and they're probably not even there, but how does this country and these people recover from this type of devastation, right? That it's happening now, but this is going to be probably years.
Yeah, it really is. There's so many different steps. First of all, you need to totally assessed yet, and then you also have to kind of do it quickly, because you have these bodies that are still stuck and that are going to contaminate the water supply, and they are going to cause disease if you leave them out too long. So what happens is that these kind of crews, they once the decision has been taken at a very high level that there's no chance for survivors to be found anymore. So that means that we're going to stop the rescue missions, and now we're going to do the cleanup mission.
Right.
And so the cleanup mission is, taking all that debris that includes possibly bodies, and then you have to put them in a place that's, you can't just put them in the land, in the, what's it called, the landfill. You can't just put them in a landfill. You have to find a place where your land is like is in an isolated place. It's in a place that's not above water, so that it can't contaminate water. It has to be like very secured place, so that that debris does not cause any disease. And so once that's done, then you can start thinking about rebuilding. But then who's going to rebuild? How are they going to rebuild? I mean, the government says, oh, we're going to rebuild the cities in a year. I mean, that just sounds really, really insane. Yeah,
Right.
That's what they're saying.
Wow.
Right. But they're saying that. And so in a year, and schools are closed, for example. They're closed around the country since the earthquake. So at first they were going to close them just for a week, and now they're closing them for at least 2 weeks. And that's so that, officially, so that people who need to be evacuated can be evacuated even to different parts of the country, and they can sleep in a school. But what do you do with those kids, right, that are not at school? Like if you're working and your kids are not at school, then well, where are they? Like, who are they with? So you have all of these things that are like so up in the air, and people are just don't know what to expect from one day to the next. And yeah, I mean, when you look at the situation now, I can't imagine these cities rebuilt in a year. I mean, that to me, that just sounds ludicrous.
Right.
And so we'll see how long it takes, but it's definitely going to take years.
And so just want to kind of go back over some facts. So we're talking about, was it 31,000 currently reported as dead, but
31,000 bodies recovered.
Right, bodies recovered, but that's just so far. I mean, rescue efforts are still going on. That's only in Turkey. And they are still finding people just about every day. And so what can people do right now to support? I mean, Shona, do you have any information about local relief efforts that people can support, either maybe GoFundMe's or national, and international relief efforts?
Unfortunately, I don't have that information on me right now. I know that there are some, but it's hard to know on the internet. You're like, is it a scam? Is it thing? They're like, oh, send money to this IBAN. Like, is it really? It's hard to know. And then if you send it, for example, to like a big organization like the Red Cross, it's like, okay, well, that's obviously really important, but like the Red Cross is such a big organization that you're like not sure exactly how and when your help is going to get there. So I know it's especially being so far like in a place like North America. I totally understand people's frustration and feeling of powerlessness. If if there's like, maybe, I don't know, if there's like a mosque in your area, maybe they're organizing relief efforts, or maybe like a local,
Red Cross, maybe. But probably the Red Cross is on probably on site there, right?
Yeah, so here we have the Red Crescent, which is like
gotcha.
the affiliation of the Red Cross. But yeah, it's like I saw USAID is here. You've got you've got like, also you mentioned an organization that I'd never heard of, but there's just so many organizations from like almost 80 countries, I think, that have pledged, or 90 countries that have pledged aid and support. But it's actually interesting you're asking about like what people can do. That's another thing that I wanted to touch on, is that the aid on the like citizen level, at least here in Turkey, has been incredible. Like, people coming from all over the country, driving their cars, stocking up, like people donating clothes, food, baby bottles, diapers, tents, of course, all kinds of things. And sometimes even like creating massive traffic jams to affected areas, just because they're bringing in so much help on their own. Or sometimes, like, there's also, like, the other day we saw lots of people making soup, like soup kitchens, like makeshift, like on like a wood fire outside, and like a huge drum, making soup for.
Wow.
A lot of that kind of, very personalized aid, on a very individual level. But that's not what's going to replace bigger, more structural. It helps, obviously. It's very heartening to see, and it does make a difference. But in these circumstances, this is when you really need a strong kind of organized state response. And it has been, it's not been a total disaster, but it's definitely not been, to the scale of the damage. The government right now is really trying to regain the narrative on what happened on the catastrophe. They're saying, they're getting all these geologists to be like, but this earthquake is, such a strong earthquake, and nobody could have prevented anything from happening. This is unprecedented. We are doing everything we can. Like, misinformation kills people too. I kid you not. The guy from the government said that yesterday. And for a few days, they even like severely limited access to Twitter here in Turkey. Even though
Oh,
like sometimes people were like tweeting their location from under the ruins, being like, "I'm here, get me." So that was just really
wow.
not appreciated. But fortunately, that only lasted a couple days. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with this, but the aid for a personal level, I would say go to a local mosque or a local charity, maybe see if they're doing something, sending, goods over, or donating to a bigger one as well.
Wow. Shauna, thank you so much for your time. I mean, it's afternoon there, everyone. While it's morning here. Thank you for would you come back once you get home and have had some time to be with your baby girl and tell us like, you know, your that experience once you get because right now I know that you're in journalist mode and you're trying to capture the information so you can share with the world, but would you come back on this morning and talk a little bit more about this, and we can kind of talk about just that experience that you had?
It would be my
Oh, there he goes. Fantastic, fantastic. Listen, we've been live with Shona Bhattacharyya from Turkey. Shauna, again, thank you so much. Appreciate you and the folks at France 24, France 24, staying on top of this, giving us the information that we need to know about what's happening there with these beautiful souls that are making their way through this disaster.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you. Oh, wow, Teresa. My heart is just kind of like, I'm just like, wow. It's crazy.
I had goosebumps running through my body at various points of her interview this morning. That
Yeah.
it hits a chord. There were some, and I don't, I'd love to talk to you about some of those moments when it's, you can really have a feeling of, how it would have impacted you had you been able to see what she saw in those
Right.
moments.
Right. It's why I want to have her back. Because I think she has a very special and unique insight into,
Mhm.
very personally experiencing something where you have to have a whole bunch of empathy and compassion in your heart to be able to tell these stories and to bring that to the world. And so I really thank her for that, and thank the other journalists that are on the ground there telling these beautiful stories and heartbreaking stories
Mhm.
of people going through tragedy. So listen, everybody, listen, we are almost out of time. I just want to say on behalf of all of us, I want to say thank you to Teresa for being here with me for this special show. Again, Shona Bhattacharyya from France 24, France 24 on site in Turkey near the Syrian border for the earthquake disaster that's there. Listen, we hope you come back and join us again for another show every weekday, 8 a.m. Eastern, for our live broadcast. You can also listen to us Thursdays and Fridays at 9 a.m. Pacific at KMET 1490 for all of you out on the West Coast, or you can check out our website at soulivity.com/this-morning for any episode that you might have missed. So on behalf of myself and Teresa, thank you for joining us today. We hope that you come back. And while you're waiting for that next show, keep on having great and real conversations that empower you with passion and purpose and create that high life and high quality life today. See you next time.
any publication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.